Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuhu. I am Jomar Tantong Magid and this is the continuation of our report. So, Borneo Colonization Project. Hidalgo, on the other hand, objected to the colonization project, saying, "This idea about Borneo is no good. Why should we leave the Philippines, this beautiful country of ours? And besides, what will people say? Why have we made all these sacrifices? Why should we go to a foreign land without first exhausting all means for the welfare of the country, which nurtured us from our cradles? Tell me that." The, the infamous whaler, whom the Cubans called the Butcher, was relieved of his gubernatorial office. A new Governor General Eulogio Despujol, the Count of Caspe, announced to the Filipino people and a fine program of government. Rizal sent him a letter of felicitation dated December 23, 1891 and offering his cooperation, but instead the governor did not even acknowledge receipt of his letter. Rizal wrote a second letter dated March 21, 1892. In this second letter, he requested the Governor-General to permit the landless Filipinos to establish themselves in Borneo. Despujol did not give Rizal the courtesy of a reply. Instead, he notified the Spanish Consul General in Hong Kong to tell Rizal that he could not approve the Filipino immigration to Borneo, alleging that the Philippines lacked laborers and it was not very patriotic to go off and cultivate foreign soil. Writings in Hong Kong. He wrote Ang Mga Karapatan ng Tao, a Tagalog translation of the Rights of Man, proclaimed by the French Revolution in 1789. About the same time, 1891, he wrote A la Nación Española, to the Spanish nation, which is an appeal to Spain to right the wrongs done to the Calamba tenants. Another proclamation entitled Sa Mga Kababayan, to My Countrymen, was written in December 1891, explaining the Calamba agrarian situation. Rizal contributed articles to the British daily newspaper, the Hong Kong Telegraph, whose editor, Mr. Frazier Smith, was his friend. March 2, 1892, Rizal wrote Una Visita a la Victoria Gaol, a visit to Victoria Gaol, an account of his visit to the colonial prison of Hong Kong. In this article, he contrasted the cruel Spanish prison system with the modern and more humane prison system. He wrote an article entitled Colonización do British North Borneo par de Familias de les Philippines, or in English, Colonization of British North Borneo by Families from the Philippine Islands, to elucidate his Borneo colonization project. He elaborated on the same idea in another article in Spanish, Proyecto de Colonización del British North Borneo por los Filipinos. In English, Project of the Colonization of British North Borneo by the Filipinos. June 1892, he wrote La Mano Roja, the Red Hand, which denounces the frequent outbreaks of intentional fires in Manila. Constitution of the Liga Filipina, printed in 1892, was the most important writing made by Rizal during his Hong Kong sojourn. To deceive the Spanish authorities, the printed copies carries the false information that the printing was done by the London Printing Press, number 25 Hulog Street, London. The idea was establishing the Liga Filipina was originally conceived by Jose Maria Basa, but it was Rizal who wrote its constitution and realized its establishment. Decision to return to Manila. May 1892, Rizal made up his mind to return to Manila. The decision was spurred by the following. Number 1, to confer with Governor Despuhol regarding his Borneo colonization project. Number 2, to establish the Liga Filipina in Manila. Then number 3, to prove that Eduardo de Lete was wrong in attacking him in Madrid, that he being comfortable and safe in Hong Kong had abandoned the country's cause. Lete's attack, which was printed in La Solidaridad on April 15, 1892, portrayed Rizal as cowardly, egoistic, opportunistic, a patriot in words only. Rizal protested to Del Pilar saying, "I am more convinced that yourself to be carried away. Friend or enemy, if the article has harmed me, it would harm more the interest of the Philippines. Who knows, however, if after all it was for the best, it has shaken me awake, and long after a long silence I entered the field anew. I am going to activate the propaganda again and fortify the Liga." To Ponce, Rizal confided on May 23, 1892, "I am very sorry that Del Pilar allowed the article to be published because it will lead many to believe that there is really a schism among us. I believe that we can well have the little misunderstanding and personal differences among ourselves without exhibiting them in public. As for myself, I always welcome criticisms because they improve those who wish to be improved." Last Hong Kong letters. On June 19, 1892, he spent his 31st birthday in Hong Kong. Evidently, he had premonition of his death, for the following day, June 20, he wrote the two letters which he sealed, inscribed in each envelope, "To be opened after my death," and gave them to his friend Dr. Marquez for safekeeping. The first letter was addressed to my parents, brethren, and friends, is as follows. "The affection that I have ever professed for you suggests this step, and time alone can tell whether or not it is sensible. The outcome judges things according to the consequences, but whether the result be favorable or unfavorable, it may always be said that duty urged me. So if I die in doing it, it will not matter. I realize how much suffering I have caused you, yet I do not regret what I have done. Rather, if I had to begin over again, I should do just the same. For what I have done has been only pursuit of my duty. Gladly do I go to expose myself to peril, not as an expiation of misdeeds, for in this matter I believe myself guiltless of any, but to complete my work, and so that I myself may offer the examples of which I have always preached. A man ought to die for duty and his principles. I hold fast to every idea which I have advanced as to the condition and future of our country, and shall willingly die for it, and even more willingly sacrifice all to secure justice and peace for you. With pleasure, then, I risk life to save so many innocent persons, so many nieces and nephews, so many children of friends, and children too of others who are not even friends, who are suffering on my account. What am I, a bachelor, practically without a family and sufficiently undeceived as to life? I have I have had many disappointments, and the future before me is gloomy, and will be gloomy if light does not illuminate it with dawn of a better day for my native land. On the other hand, there are many persons filled with hope and ambition who perhaps might be happier if I were dead, and then I hope my enemies would be satisfied and stop persecuting so many entirely innocent people. To a certain extent, their hatred is justifiable. As to myself and my parents and relatives, should fate go against me, you will all understand that I shall die happy in the thought that my death will end all your troubles. Return to our country and may you be happy in it. Till the last moment of my life, I shall be thinking of you and wishing you all the good fortune and happiness. The second letter was addressed to the Filipinos and is as follows. The step which I am taking, or rather am about to take, is undoubtedly risky, and it is unnecessary to say that I have considered it for some time. I understand that almost everyone is opposed to it, but I know also that hardly anybody else understands what is in my heart. I cannot live on seeing so many suffer unjust persecution on my account. I cannot bear the sight of my sisters and their numerous families treated like criminals. I prefer death and cheerfully shall relinquish life to free so many innocent persons from such unjust persecution. I appreciate the fact that at present the future of our country gravitates in some degree around me, and that my death and that my death many will feel triumphant, and thus many are now wishing for my fall. But what of it? I hold duties of conscience above all else. I have obligation to the families who suffer, to my aged parents whose sight strikes me to their heart. I know that I alone, only my death can make them happy, returning them to their native land to a peaceful life at home. I am all my parents have, but our country has many more sons who can take my place and even do my work better. Besides, I wish to show those who deny us the boon of patriotism that we know how to die for duty and principles. What matters death if one dies for what one loves, for native land and beings held dear? If I thought that I were the only resource for the consummation of a policy of progress in the Philippines, and were I convinced that my countrymen were going to make use of my services, perhaps I should hesitate about taking this step. But there are others who can take my place, who can do my services that are not utilized, and I am reduced to inactivity. Always have I love our unhappy land, and I am sure that I shall continue loving it till my last moment. In case men prove unjust to me, my career, my life, my happiness, and all I have sacrificed for love of it. Whatever fate, whatever my fate, I shall die blessing it and longing for the dawn of its redemption. June 21, 1892. Rizal penned another letter in Hong Kong for Governor Desbohol. In this letter, he informed the Governor-General of his coming to Manila and placed himself under the protection of the Spanish government. June 21, 1892. On the same date, Rizal and his sister Lucia left Hong Kong for Manila. They carried a special passport or safe conduct issued by the Spanish Consul General in Hong Kong. Rizal falls into Spanish trap. The Spanish Consul General sent a cablegram to Governor Despool that the victim is in the trap. On the same day, a secret case was filed in Manila against Rizal and his followers for anti-religious and anti-patriotic agitation. Despuhol ordered his secretary Luis de la Torre to find out if Rizal was naturalized as a German citizen, as was rumored, so that he might take proper action against on who had the protection of strong nation. Meanwhile, Rizal and his sister were peacefully crossing the China Sea. They were fully unaware of the Spanish duplicity. And that's all. Thank you for listening.